So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 98, which we actually changed up a bit and had Amy Buechler join us, who's a startup founder coach. So Amy is not just any startup founder coach, but was the first and only in-house founder coach at Combinator, along with being the first batch director. So Amy has worked with some of the most legendary startup founders from the earliest stages at YC in their batches to now also at the later stages and even post-IPO. So this is a really incredible chat with Amy, where we got to learn more about her previous experience and learnings from YC, discuss the importance of founder coaching, touch on some topics we rarely discuss as founders, like having tough conversations with co-founders and teams, how to manage the highs and lows of being a startup founder, and also had a really great Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Amy, welcome to the group chat. And this is a real treat to have you join us here today. So I've been wanting to chat with you for a while now, as the recording from your previous YC talk with Michael Seibel has been shared quite a few times in the community. So couldn't be more excited to have you join us here today and for us to get the chance to talk about some of the incredibly important topics to us all as marketplace startup founders. Before we really jump into things, though, I think it might be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background, though, for those that don't know you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy. Before I was YC's batch director, I was a psychotherapist and I ran a private practice in San Francisco. And I rolled coaching into my role at YC because I saw founders struggling with their emotions and relationships, and I just happened to have the experience and training to help them. So it wasn't necessarily planned by anybody, including me, and definitely not by YC. I just kind of saw a need and then rose to meet it. And I've been invited to give a talk to every batch at YC since 2016, and I've coached over 1,000 startups since then. I've stopped counting at this point. It just is like a little bit too much overhead for me to manage. And would it be helpful for me to like talk about what I did at YC or?
Yeah, that would be great. I would actually
Okay.
love to, to go back though for a little bit now, learn how you actually joined YC.
Yeah. When I finished grad school as a therapist, I opened a private practice immediately, but the experiences I had in grad school as a therapist really made me realize that there's a little bit more to me than just the womb, like the Freudian psychoanalytic womb, the warmth, the support, the caring, nurturing, like mother figure. And so I became really deeply interested in working in tech too and putting some other skills to use. In grad school, part of my experience was to be a psychotherapist to a bunch of high schoolers in the Mission District of San Francisco and to work with a really amazing group of teenagers that were experiencing a huge amount of trauma and violence all day, every day. And it was a really difficult experience for me to manage as I tried to figure out how the richest, city in the world with some of the most privileged human beings on earth could coincide, their lives could coincide with these kids whose experiences were so vastly different. And so that was kind of like a big existential problem for me. And I got into tech thinking that if somehow I could figure out how to get the people in positions of power to be a little bit more compassionate about themselves, I was kind of hoping and assuming that that compassion would somehow trickle down eventually into the communities that they lived in and the relationships that they had in the rest of their world. I don't think I've ever really told anybody that. I certainly haven't told anybody who I see that. Again, it's like that was like this very fuzzy, vague idea I had. I didn't know anything about tech. I was a complete outsider. I didn't know what Y Combinator was. It sounded like gibberish to me. And so it was more just like reaching out to the only recruiter that I knew in the world who had happened to marry a YC founder, who had happened to start a recruiting business in the tech space that allowed me to even get in front of Jessica and all of the other folks at YC too.
I mean, that's a pretty incredible story. So Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, when you did join YC, like what did you kind of come into there? And, what, I guess, what was your kind of role as a in-house kind of founder coach?
So I joined YC as their first batch manager was the title at the time. And I was YC's first operational hire. And my entire job description was to look after founders. And like that was it. That was like as clear as they got back then. And I was hired in 2015 when YC was 10 years old, but they were still really small at that point. So that was before they had a software team, a finance team, a legal team. Like it was literally just me and the partnership. And Irina, who was like, I don't know actually what she did, something in the finance world. Um, and at that time, we funded around 80 companies at a time. And by the time that I left in 2019, we were starting to fund around 250. And so my product was the YC batch. And so I owned the user journey from the time that founders interviewed at YC until they walked off the stage at Demo Day. And then I also managed the YC alumni community too. And that meant a lot of different things, right? Because YC as an organization scaled around me. And so my job was to manage the whole batch schedule, including all of the events and eventually all of the software that founders touched, including demo days. And it really was like thinking about and creating resources to help YC itself as an organization scale. So I was the main point of contact for every YC founder from 2015 to 2019. And because I was so close to so many founders, gathering their feedback and working to iterate on everything that happened as a part of the batch, I really got a sense of how emotionally difficult it was, right, for founders to start a startup. And I didn't really think that there were any resources that were helping founders at the time. And because, it was already my job to like look after and take care of founders, I figured again, I might be in the best position to help them. So it was maybe a year into my time at YC that I rolled coaching into my role. And I did that alongside all of my other operational duties. And just like everything else at YC, it was a constant iteration and experimentation. And I've like kind of tried everything under the sun, like small sided workshops, big sided workshops, talks, individual office hours, group office hours, like written resources, content, anything that I could think of to help founders manage their experiences and try to sort of like show up to their relationships in a healthier way. Like I did it. And all of that, really is kind of like changed and evolved over time until YC and I together are just kind of like, okay, give one really good talk to every batch, and kind of have that be it. And so that's now what I do. As much as I'll do that for as long as they want to invite me back to give that talk to the YC batch, I will.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing more with us on that. And it's pretty incredible to given where YC is at today, to kind of hear about the early days and your experience there. I was actually you did briefly mention it, but I was gonna ask about how the role of a founder coach kind of changed there over the course of time too, and the capacity that you worked with founders.
It's funny because I don't think I figured out that title, founder coaching, until I left and had to kind of set up my own business around it. Like I remember just sitting down and spitballing with like the marketing lead that they had hired at the time. And we were like, what can my domain be? Like, what am I even doing? Like, what can I call myself? It's like not really an exec coach because it's a lot more specific and like, yeah, it was like, I don't know, this whole kind of journey that I went on as an individual, starting my own thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody on the call here can relate. Again, founder coaching, as it turned out to be, was just like not the smallest part of my role, but it was a little bit like my side project, right? I had so much other stuff to worry about that I did what I could. And again, experimented small workshops, large workshops about relationships, workshops about managing stress and anxiety. like meditation mindfulness workshops. That one was like not really my favorite, like, and again, individual office hours every week, group office hours every month. Like it was anything that I could think of that I could fit into my schedule that I thought would have the maximum impact for the largest number of founders. And so that product experimentation continues to this day, as I'm still sort of trying to figure out what I can provide, how I can provide the most value to founders and the most kind of deep support given what I know of them.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it might be helpful too to kind of I guess further define like what a founder coach kind of is, and maybe how it kind of differs from like a therapist, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm not sure, like I sort of suspect that it would change depending on who you ask. The kind of founder coaching that I do is very, very specific to founders because that's my expertise. And it's very deep. Like I very much dive into, like, we kind of unpack founder psychology. Like, what is it that motivates you? Why do you believe that this is your purpose? Why did that very neutral investor question make you feel like you were failing? What makes you sensitive to that? Like, let's really open the hood and go as deep as we can and heal everything that we can in order to make you on the surface a lot more resilient. So there's like a depth to my founder coaching that comes out of my experience as a psychotherapist. But there's also kind of more on the surface, all of the pattern matching that I'm able to do because I worked with 1,000 startups before I even left YC. And so, I can talk with a founder about how he was brought into a meeting with a CTO, brought into a meeting with his CEO and their biz dev guy. And like, he was like, I don't know. I just got like really overwhelmed and afraid. Like, I feel like they're so unfocused. And what are we even doing? And it's like, I know exactly that that's not about you and it's not about them. It's just about the context. And that's a tension that will always exist in an early stage startup. And so like, I'm able kind of as a clinician to really understand what's very specific to that founder's psychology and what's more specific to the context and sort of provide guidance and advice and healing based off of what that is. Now, I don't really do networking, and so I can't really speak to what other founder coaches do. I can't speak to necessarily how exec coaching is different. And therapy is like, it's just less context specific, right? So like they're kind of like these little differences. And yeah, but that sort of describes, I don't know, like a very sort of sloppy way of how I feel like I work with founders.
Yeah, no, that's great. I wish I would have known you and reached out to you a few years ago as a founder myself.
I kind of like to think that like founder coaching with me helps founders skip the line a little bit, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not a you thing. This is just about the context that you're in, right? And so like, let's kind of move all of that away and really talk about, what's really going on here.
Yeah, certainly. So as you mentioned, you've worked with like thousands of startups at this point and founders. So are there any kind of like common challenges that you're seeing like founders work through right now? Maybe even, with like a lot of the kind of the environment as far as everything kind of going on, where these are common challenges and maybe how you're kind of helping coach them through them?
There are so many that it's actually difficult for me to answer that question. But this is like, I think one of the things that I've learned that I think not many people know that I wish that they did, which is that there are so many commonalities between founders, regardless of vertical, regardless of, I don't know, any kind of additional detail or context. Like, for the most part, founders are on the same journey, even though they all feel really alone, right? So the experiences that you're having dealing with stress and anxiety and uncertainty and really trying to build a strong relationship with a new co-founder, right? As you build a product, and then the sort of growth challenges and sales challenges and scaling challenges of finding product market fit, then growing and managing a team around your product, like each of those milestones also includes almost developmental milestones for a founder's growth, right? There's like all of these gates, like founders need to learn how to have difficult conversations with their co-founders before they can sort of manage an employee properly, right? Founders, again, need to learn how to digest their anxiety and their fear, manage their uncertainty before they can kind of lead a team through an economic downturn, right? And each founder, as long as the company is alive, is like kind of on that same path, like taking those same steps, again, even though they kind of don't know it, right? And so, because founders are generally on the same growth trajectory, that means that processing your emotions and really leaning into building strong relationships becomes a competitive advantage, right? And one example of this is like 500,000 years ago when like COVID really hit the fan. I mean, this like feels like it was so much longer than like 2 years, right? All of the clients that I had at that time were in some ways dealing with similar challenges, right? Like markets were disintegrating, time stopped, everything stood still. They had to completely rebuild their plans, right? Completely. They had to scrap a lot of headcount. There were a lot of layoffs at that time. There was just a huge amount of uncertainty and chaos. A lot of founders had to give up on the dreams that they'd had, you know, that they'd spent at some points, like one of my clients had been working on his company for a decade. And within the span of like 2 weeks, he was like, it's not going to work anymore, given how my market is changing, right? And so every founder kind of followed a similar trajectory of like recognizing what was going on, feeling all the feelings in the world about all of the changes that they were going to have to figure out and manage. And then also feeling a huge amount of grief at what they were losing and what they were leaving behind. And we're not even talking about them managing their lives as humans. I'm just talking about, which is like a whole nother thing, just talking about all of the stuff that they were experiencing at work. And so again, same kind of trajectory of decisions and difficult emotions and experiences to process. And I had one client that was able to like go through thing after thing after thing after thing and make all of the necessary changes and deal with all of those difficult feelings in the span of, I think, 3 days. And it took another one of my clients almost 2.5 months to walk himself kind of through the same sets of challenges, again, emotional and strategic. And like they were in very different markets, like they're in different countries, right? But imagine if they were competitors, right? And how much more time that incredibly quick, like I have tears in my eyes the entire time I'm making these decisions, but I know that they're right. And I'm able to do that with thoughtful intent, right? That founder would have given himself a nearly 3-month lead, right? In comparison with another founder who like couldn't quite fully sort of comprehend everything that he was experiencing through that decision.
Wow, I mean, my thoughts right now, it's just so relatable, interesting enough, that's actually how the community started, was at the beginning of the pandemic. So kind of
No
spun it up
way.
as I didn't really have I was a solo founder myself, so I didn't really have a really tight knit kind of group of founders to connect with. So I actually did want to jump into some group questions here in a little bit, because we have quite a few on here. Hey Chris, do you want to jump on?
Sure. Thank you. Myself, I've been using the Y Combinator Startup School resources for probably a year now. Went through the whole cofoundermatch.com that was created there. So I've enjoyed a lot of kind of the frameworks and the ways of thinking about my startup, product market fit, fundraising, etc. And then there's this matching tool, which gets some good surface layer. But then what? I couldn't find resources of what do we talk about? How do I start to really dive into, is this a good start to the relationship? How do I have that language? And the best I could come up with was searching. I found 50 questions to ask a co-founder from First Round Capital. It seemed like a good place to start, but I wasn't sure if there were resources that I hadn't found yet or other ways to figure out a co-founder candidate that I've never worked with, is this going to be a good thing? How can I set myself up for success?
Oh my God, I love this question so much. This is not just a you thing. I don't think I mean, I don't know of that many resources. I know that they exist, but it's like, I know that they exist in the email inboxes of like some of the founder friends that I have, and I've like bugged them a million times. Please send them to me so I can publish them, right? Let me organize my thoughts as I sort of settle into your question. There's a couple different ways I could answer it. There are two problems and two solutions here that I can share with you. One of them is more surface level tactical, right? Co-founder matching is a bit like dating, and there's only going to be so much that you know in advance, but there is stuff that you should kind of know in advance, right? And so I would say keep searching for those co-founder matching questionnaires. There's a book, let me see, I can't remember it. I'll like ping it to Mike or something later to share with you. But essentially it's a good book for early stage founders that helps you think about your values and how to talk about your values, right? Like what's really deeply important to you, because your values are always going to be different from your co-founders, but your values are kind of the things that you're not going to give up on, right? And your values could track on the surface as something as simple as, in an early stage situation, there is a question of, well, we kind of think that maybe there could be some traction here with this like current use case we're thinking about building this product for. Like, how much do we experiment, find more users, get more feedback? Like, how much do we kind of stay here and juice versus how much do we like just keep brainstorming and throwing a bunch of like spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, right? Like that's actually a difference in a deeper value. And it's the value can kind of change from person to person, but it's often like, I value having all the information before making a decision versus I value more a spirit of experimentation, right? And just like, again, having a more scattered approach. Now, neither are bad or wrong, for example, right? They're just differences within people that are not clear from the outside, usually until there's friction and conflict around the surface discussion, right? And so this is an opportunity where a lot of co-founders like notice that friction and blow it up. And they're like, who is this person? This is so unfocused. Like, am I in partnership with like an insane person, right? And like they make that friction a lot bigger instead of recognizing, oh, there's some kind of a difference here. We're not seeing eye to eye because I can already kind of tell I'm having weird feelings about this, right? And so the right kind of trigger and mechanism is like, talk to your co-founder about what you're noticing with a sense of openness and curiosity. I'll just give an example and then I'll kind of get back to your actual question. A good example in that random use case is like, I'm noticing that I am wanting more to like stay here and that you're wanting to like throw spaghetti at the wall. Let's have a conversation about that, right? Instead of being like, no, you're unfocused, we're doing the wrong thing. Okay, so tactically speaking, keep looking for those questionnaires. Again, they're out there. I just don't know exactly where. And know too that you'll only get a little bit of information, maybe a little to a lot of information, but not full information about that partnership, right? And the rest of that information is going to be, you're going to have to kind of figure out what it's like to be in conflict with that person, whether you do kind of have, whether you kind of can get through those moments of conflict well, with a sense of deeper understanding for one another. And I kind of recommend that you do a little bit of like a 3-month stint, right? After the initial co-founder matching, whatever, we think we have the same values, we think we want the same things, just try a trial, and see what it's really like. Again, don't use conflict as an indicator of failure, right? Use it as an indicator that there can be greater understanding between two people who simply are different people.
I think the biggest thing is, conflict will happen like in any relationship. And it's like, what do you do with it? And I think the biggest thing I've heard before from others, taking in from a lot of data points is early on, just talk about how you choose to resolve conflict before it even happens. Just like, what are you going to do when it happens? Shall we have set aside a 3-hour meeting and just hash it out until we're done? Or, just have some kind of framework that says we're having a conflict. Let's go to the playbook and let's work through it. I don't know if that's a good way to go about it either.
It's a good idea. I might even bring that question into your co-founder discussions, like how, like, we know that we're going to have conflict. What do you think how can we kind of figure that out? How can we de-risk that in advance? Like, again, you can build that playbook in partnership with your co-founder, knowing that a playbook is like a good thing to have, but it's not, you're going to have to rewrite the playbook over and over again as you keep going along. So yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Thank you.
Also don't minimize the necessity or the helpfulness of aligning on values before you get going. And there's more resources. I'll think of that book that I'm thinking of, but values are really important to just get clear on early on.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm soaking this all in myself. So this is it's great. So, hey, Tomas, you sent me a message. Did you want to jump on?
Yeah, sounds good. And totally agree. Amy, I feel like this conversation is just like applying an X-ray lens to, the past several years of confusion and difficulty. Like, oh, that's what was happening. That makes so much sense. So thank you. I wanted to, get your question actually a bit more about one of the tensions I've seen in the broader, investing space and around tech. Because on the one hand, I've heard from marketplace focused investors that for marketplace businesses specifically, that specific type of business is more execution constrained and not technology constrained, which means that especially now, there are more marketplace founders that are able to get through launch, seed, and even beyond on using entirely no-code platforms. But I think in general, I've been hearing that from the general tech space and YC in particular, that there's like a very strong orientation towards having a technical co-founder as part of the founding team as kind of a starting point. So I wanted just to get your perspective to see how the investing ethos within YC has changed over time when it comes to applicants coming in with a no-code product.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that because I haven't been at YC since 2019, even though I still do moonlight as a batch speaker. Would it be helpful for you if I spoke about their ethos between 2015 and 2019 or no?
Totally.
Before I do that, could I ask about the dimension of yourself that I feel like I can add the most value, which is emotional? Is there any fear or uncertainty or confusion behind this question for you that maybe we could think through together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is a sense of just wanting to know what opportunities are available. Because I feel like looking at kind of a starting point for an early stage company feels very much like being like looking out towards a really wide horizon. And I feel like moving forward in a smart way is an exercise in really determining which parts of that horizon personally I want to go to, and also which part of that horizon are even feasible to move towards. Because myself and my co-founder are not technical. We've built our marketplace on a no-code stack. So we're like trying to make sure that we're moving forward and kind of like spending time where it's even possible for us to be.
Yeah, I think the way I can answer that is to keep doing what you're doing, basically, and by that I mean keep building what you're building, and then maybe look at YC or any other investor, whatever, as potential things that can help you and can maybe like fast track you along, but certainly not the only things. And so, like, I don't know, I don't think necessarily it would be helpful for me to talk about YC's investing ethos since I'm not affiliated with them. anymore. Like I don't work with them, but they're, for the most part, they're like, their take is like they want to fund technical teams so they can actually execute really quickly over the course of the 3-month batch, right? It's just like that really intense time to drive growth. I don't know. This is perhaps not a helpful question. Answer. Let me just kind of sit with this for a moment. Yeah, I don't know. My answer is still just like keep building what you're building and see who you meet that can be helpful and supportive of you in whatever way, right? And even if you're not a fit for YC or some other investor or some customer or something, just keep going. Essentially it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Namu, do you want to jump on?
Yeah. Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I might have missed the first part, but thank you so much for sharing. My question is more along the lines of, I'm a solo founder, and obviously I am woman of color, and being non-technical, I get a lot of questions and just find it kind of difficult to navigate sometimes the environment that looks very different from me. I'm sure you came across a lot of founders who experience this issue. Speaking of authenticity, I am curious as to what you tell some founders who struggle with being their authentic self and a leader when an environment is not really in understanding of your style and personality. And when people tell me to be more aggressive and louder when it just is not my authentic self to be that way. And oftentimes, sometimes I need an explanation, and that's kind of uncomfortable. And as a founder, I sometimes have to assert my leadership skills. I'm curious as to like what you tell those people and how can I present myself so that I don't have to kind of go through that uncomfortable, hey, back and forth with potential people that I meet.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God. I love your question so much. I really appreciate how honest you were and vulnerable you were in asking it. Let me sit with it for a moment and find the right words. These are not quite the right words, but they're like the best words I can find that provide you with the type of answer I want to share, which is I could not possibly encourage you more to give yourself permission to be yourself in every situation that you're in. Like, give yourself permission to have leadership look a particular way because of who you are, and to have your strategic decisions look a certain way because of your own assessment and inventory of resources and connections that you have, right? And what you need. Give yourself permission to say and speak whatever it is that you feel is authentically and strongly true for you, right? And give yourself permission to believe that your success can come from that place.
That's beautiful.
I don't know how you do that, but I encourage you, I really encourage you to try. And that comes from my experiences with like 1,000+ of the world's best startup founders, in which I saw over and over and over again that the strength and courage that it took for them to be themselves in every interaction and in every decision was the only thing that allowed them to, I'm being a little dramatic. It was a thing that really contributed to their success over time, because they were able to build deep trust and loyalty among their team and their investors, because their product had integrity and a sense of consistency to it that is important in the early stages. And because they weren't necessarily seen as ever, with some exceptions, like thrashing wildly back and forth, right? There was sort of like a consistency to them that other people, users, employees, whatever, a co-founder can really hold on to, right? And this is sort of like an entree into another point that's important. There's so much uncertainty that just comes baked into an early stage startup, that trust is the emotion that counteracts all of that. I mean, to the extent that like any of that uncertainty, it can be de-risked. And the more you can trust yourself to show up consistently and authentically and honestly, the less fear and uncertainty you have to deal with overall. And that is like a very good thing to like have slightly less uncertainty and more trust in as many places as you can find. Again, in your integrity of your product, in your relationships with yourself and with your co-founder, with your team, any of your vendors, right? So like the more trust you can develop in every direction, the better overall.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that question. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, that was a really amazing question. Yeah, thanks everyone for just opening up and really the authentic conversation here. This is really incredible. So we're going to try to get in one more question if we can. Hey, Zach, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And Amy, thank you for your time, and certainly appreciate the dialogue here. It's certainly got a lot of vulnerability and emotion in it. So it's certainly helpful. One question is more on the coaching side of things. So I have a business coach and acts as a personal coach as well. And I'm curious what your take is on the duration of a coach and when the right time is to switch to another coach. I'm assuming you've seen that after you coach someone, let's just say for 2 or 3 years, once a week you're meeting with them, they start to anticipate what maybe that coach's response could be. Although that coach is in charge of asking, intriguing questions that makes you think about things differently. I'm just curious what you might consider. I mean, is it based on things you're going through in your own life? Is it things, the evolution of your business? Can you help speak to when you feel like the right time to switch to a new coach might be, and if maybe there isn't a right time or something? Maybe that I'm happy to provide a little more detail if needed.
So my answer to you is in some ways very similar to the answers I've given to other founders, I think, on this call, which is there is no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong time. There's no right or wrong way to be a founder. There's no right or wrong way to like basically do anything when it comes to startups. The best way is to do what you feel is best at any given moment in time. And what that looks like for early-ish stage founders is like 50.5% certainty and like 49.5% absolute chaos and no knowing whatsoever, right? Like there's so much uncertainty in every direction in early stage startups. It's so rare for founders to get to 80% certainty on any decision. And so answering this question and many of these others, what is required is for you to be very close and in touch with yourself about it. Very close and in touch with your sense, your thoughts, your feelings, your motivations, your dream and your vision for yourself, right? Where you're headed that maybe very few other people do, and what you have inside of you and close around you that will help you get there. And so whatever you think is best is gonna be best. That said, I do have a more specific way of answering that question, which is from my perspective might be different from your coaches. So I totally encourage you to say, I might have maybe been thinking about ending with you. I wanted to talk with you about that. What do you think is the best time? Where am I at? Like, what else is here for me in this relationship? Like, go have that conversation with your coach. That's what they're there for. My personal philosophy is, very sadly, that I'm always trying to get my clients to the point where we can have a conversation in which they say, I have learned so much from you that I feel like I can do this on my own. And what that moment means for me is that my clients trust themselves enough to know that they can handle all of the crises in their future, right? With all of the strength that we've created within them, with all of the tools, with all the strong relationships, with all of the authentic communication, right? They don't trust that they'll be able to solve every problem. They don't have any idea what they are, but they know they will be able to get through them. That also often requires that I have become an internalized voice in their minds, right? That now I'm leaving them with, like, hopefully a sense of compassion and a sense of gentleness and a sense of looking at these situations from all of the different levels and finding not the right way, but the best way that they can find to proceed. Right. And so you kind of saying, like, I already know like what we'd be talking about before we even talk, is like, in my book, that's a good thing, because he, I don't know, your coach is now inside of you in a way that's healthy and good. Right. So I don't know. I think that's a good thing. And your coach may have a different opinion.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I guess and correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess, are you alluding to, at a certain point, you should hopefully be in a position where you don't need a coach?
This is funny, because this is like comes up against like a funny experience that I have with my clients, some of whom I've been seeing for like 4 years now. I've like taken them from like pre-seed all the way to like series D now, and some IPOs. I feel like I'm always like, when is the time? When are they going to find the right time? Like, when do they know? When are they going to find out that, like, I'm not adding any value? And I'm like, I'm not saying anything that's new. You know what I mean? And so I leave this up to the client. I very much think that we survive as individuals, but we thrive in community. And if I'm a part of a community that founder has around them that's still doing something that's good, then I'm okay with that. Yeah, again, the time that's right is going to be the best time that my client feels is true. That said, I'm always also keeping in mind whether or not that client feels like it's the right time to end, but can't quite find the right words to say that. And I'll notice that in their behavior, if they start skipping sessions a little bit more than usual, or they, talk about some things, but they don't really want to drop into any depth with me in session, where like I can feel that there's something changing a little bit of distance. Like, I'm always waiting for that to happen so I can talk about it with them, maybe help them find words that they can't find themselves. And that hasn't happened yet. So like, I don't know, I'm just like kind of cooking with like the same case, some of the same people in my caseload that I've had for years. And I love them. And I am always like, am I helping? I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's helpful. I just was curious on those questions. I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of like you were saying, it's really, really helpful to have someone on your team that feels like on a week-to-week basis, they know everything, right? They have the whole foundation, the whole background. So that's one benefit of like a continuous long-term relationship, is like starting over is kind of a bit of a daunting issue. And so anyway, thank you for your feedback.
I'll say one more thing, which is I also think it's a sign of growth for founders to take an inventory and recognize that they have grown and changed to the extent that they now need something new and something different, right? And they are going to kind of go out there and really get it. Right. So again, I would think that it's a sign of your growth, and that the fact that like that relationship with that coach was really positive, that you were able to get to this point now to be like, I might be needing something different. Right. And I trust myself and I care for myself enough to know that like I should be going after that so I can be the best person, leader, or founder. Right. So Yeah, don't discount that growth probably that you've done that's sort of bringing you into this series of questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, totally.
Also, this is a great last question. Thanks for jumping on, Zach. Yeah, so wow, I mean, we're just all, I think, starting to understand so much more about the journey and ourselves on this. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for this group chat. Really, I'd say this is definitely one of the most special chats that we've had, and I think adds a lot to the community here. I did actually have one question for you though myself before we wrap things up. If you were to go back to right before you started your journey as a founder coach at YC and working with some of your clients now, what would you actually tell yourself about the journey?
Whew, what a question. You're doing something to me that I do to other people all day long. I'm not used to this feeling. Okay, this is what I would tell myself, because I've had also a huge amount of ups and downs and challenges and burnout and stress and shame. And like, I'm very much on the journey, as much as, I mean, maybe not as much as the pressure I feel is a lot less than found my clients. But I've had a pretty intense last couple of years too. And the advice that I'd give is just like, it's part of the ride. Try not to take it too personally. Maybe it's not just about you being a horrible human being on the inside. It's like, this is a part of what it feels like when you care really deeply about something and you want to do everything you possibly can to get it out in the world where people can maybe see what you see and benefit from your perspective. I think that we all probably share a really big heartfelt mission, and that comes with a lot of pain, right? Because our heart's involved. And so, yeah, I think my advice would just be kind of like, you can maybe be a little bit easier on yourself, knowing that like, all the things that you're experiencing are just a part of the journey.
Awesome. That's great. And then last but not least, time for kind of a quick plug. So where can we keep up with you at?
Oh my God, I love and hate this question. I'm in the middle of a website redesign right now. So you can visit my website, thefoundercoach.com. If you visit today, I also encourage you to visit maybe 3 or 4 months down the road, because it's going to be a lot of really fresh content, a lot of new resources that I'm launching, and a lot of ways that I hope I can help you, even if we're not, we haven't signed a contract and we're not working together. So visit my website, thefoundercoach.com. And I'm also on Twitter at, I think it's Amy B. I don't know what my handle is, AMYBUE. Let me check that real quick. And thanks for asking, Mike. I would like literally never have had that thought. Yeah, Twitter at AMYBUE.
Awesome. I'll include links in the recording in this, and share it in the community. So you'll have lots of new marketplace founder fans. So, well, thank you so much again. This is really incredible, and I know it means a lot to everyone here, for you to join us. So thanks for taking the time to do so, and thanks everyone for the great questions.